Why is everybody we know depressing?
Hi, my name is Zach Galifianakis. I'm here with the lead singer of the Spin Doctors, Fiona Apple. Thanks, Fiona.
I've been careless with a delicate man.
If you only have 30 seconds, here's the bottom line of this video. She told 3,000 people at the Roseland ballroom that the show sucked and walked off into a years-long retreat. She told the entire MTV watching world at 20 that the world was bullshit, and trust me, she meant every syllable. She wrote a 90-word album title as a poem. She made an album in her own Venice Beach house with a 4-piece band and her dog underfoot, and walked off with the first Pitchfork 10 given to a new release in nearly a decade. And somewhere between the slip dress in the Criminal video and the barefooted pandemic recluse who watches bond hearings on Zoom for incarcerated women in Maryland, Fiona Apple became something we did not yet have a name for back in the 90s. She became the patron saint of the articulate, furious, slightly feral woman who refuses to be cute about her own life.
Dad, they're all bruised and filthy.
Yeah, these might be throwing at buses apples, not eating apples.
Before any of that, though, she was once a 12-year-old girl walking home from school in Manhattan who was graped in the hallway outside her own apartment building. That man was, sadly, never caught. Makes me pretty angry. She wrote about it on her first record, in a song called Sullen Girl, when she was 17. And for 30 more years, she has kept writing, with her teeth in it.
But now Fiona is all over the radio, as they say.
Fiona Apple became the voice of the wronged, articulate woman because she refused very publicly and very early to do any of the things a young female pop star in 1996 was supposed to do. She refused to be likable. She refused to be quiet. She refused to be styled into a shape that the camera preferred. And she replaced the performance of femininity with something stranger and more durable. That is the secret.
I didn't tell anyone about your Fiona Apple tribute video.
I've been a bad, bad girl. I've been careless with a delicate man. And it's a sad, sad world when a girl will break a boy just because she can.
But if you would like a little more than 30 seconds, and I think you would, because we're about to get into the slip dresses, the onstage breakdown, the Oprah moment, and the natal chart that explains an alarming amount of all of it, then come closer, pour yourself something not too sweet. What does Fiona Apple drink? Tea, of course. Strong, loose-leaf black tea, brewed in a heavy pot, drunk from the kind of hand-thrown ceramic mug. She got sober in 2019, after a long, well-documented run with cocaine, ecstasy, and a great deal of red wine. So we are not going to pour anything stronger ourselves out of solidarity. Why not light a cone of Palo Santo and pretend your apartment is a Venice Beach bungalow with a rescue dog asleep on the rug? And please, follow me. Welcome. I'm Kira, and this is your beauty blueprint. I have spent the last week reading every long-form profile I could find, watching every televised interview that still exists in the wild, replaying the Criminal video at a slightly unhealthy volume, and trying, with some difficulty, to reverse engineer what makes Fiona Apple so Fiona Apple. And do stick around to the end, by the way, because I am going to give you a very practical breakdown of what we can learn, very practically speaking, from Fiona, like the smudged coal, the nude face, the slip dress and army boot grammar, all without cosplaying her, of course. Promise. And one small announcement before we settle in. To celebrate this episode, I designed a Fiona Apple-inspired t-shirt on very soft black cotton, and it is launching with this video in the channel store. The link is in the description and on your screen now. Wear it the way she would, which is to say with whatever was already on the floor, and possibly inside out. So settle in, we are about to walk through the life of a woman who has been obviously misread by almost every man who ever wrote about her. Here's a little backstory, just to set the stage. Fiona Apple McAfee-Maggart was born September 13th, 1977, in Manhattan, to the singer and dancer Diane McAfee and the actor Brandon Maggart, who had met in the cast of the Broadway musical Applause, and actually never even married.
Your family name?
Apple is not the family name. Apple is my middle name.
Ah.
And it was my grandmother's last name, I think. It was somebody's last name, like my grandmother, my great-grandmother. But my parents were never married, so I was kind of grew up using Fiona Apple, and then my mom's name and my dad's name, and like the whole name together was so long that like we kind of had to choose one if I was going to be something. And originally, I remember Meeting people, I don't know. I remember meeting people from Sony and being like, and them being like, what do you want your name to be? And I was like, not Fiona Apple. Not Fiona Apple. It's too obvious.
They split when Fiona was just 4. She and her sister Maud grew up between their mother's apartment in Morningside Heights and their father's house in Venice Beach. That same Venice Beach is where Fiona has now barely left in 15 years. Her geography is like a closed loop. The girl ends up where the girl began. The astrology, for those of us who care, maps onto the persona with almost uncanny precision. Sun in Virgo, Mercury in Virgo, Moon almost certainly also in Virgo, because she was born under a new moon, the sun and moon stacked in the same sign, which gives you a person whose conscious mind and emotional weather agree on exactly one thing, and that one thing is that they are both going to scrutinize everything down to the goddamn syllable. The birth time circulating among astrologers, around 9:59 in the morning, and if it is correct, her rising sign is Scorpio, which is the astrological shorthand for a person who walks into a room and detonates the small talk. Virgo for the perfectionism, the body issues, the obsessive editing, the 90-word album title. Scorpio rising, if it holds, is for the gaze. Whether you read charts or not, you must see it fits. Now, the complicated part that has to be told plainly, because she has always told it plainly herself. The day before Thanksgiving, 1989, Fiona was 12. She had walked home from school. A man followed her into the hallway of her own apartment building and graped her there, behind a door he chose because no one inside answered the buzzer. She told her mother. They went to the police, but the man was never identified. She developed OCD that intensified into elaborate counting rituals. She developed bad eating habits I am not allowed to mention on here, sadly, but she spoke about them publicly. Her exact words, "It was never about being thin, it was about getting rid of the bait that was attached to my body." She wrote the song Sullen Girl about it at 16. The line everyone remembers, "But he washed me sure, and he took my pearl and left an empty shell of me," is maybe the most painful sentence she ever wrote. And she wrote it before she was even old enough to vote.
That's my problem. Well, I don't like to meet people, because, especially if I really like them, because invariably I think I've done or said something stupid, and then it's ruined for me, and I can't even look at them because I wince.
Yeah. Fiona Apple. We're looking up Fiona Apple on MySpace. This is going to be sickening. She's going to have... There's your picture. Not very flattering.
She got signed at 17 because her best friend, who was babysitting for a music industry family, slipped a 3-song demo across the kitchen table to a man named Andrew Slater. And so Andrew Slater became her producer and her manager. The album they made together, Tidal, came out in July 1996. She was just 18, and it went triple platinum. Sleep to Dream was the song where she announces that she has her feet on the ground, and her mind, body, and voice will not be stifled by anyone's deviant ways. Then came Criminal. You know the video. Mark Romanek directed it. Harris Savides shot it.
This whole idea of somehow taking the aesthetic of snapshot photography and exploring it as cinema, as in motion. And, you know, one of those things you see is that red eye effect that people usually want to get rid of. And I thought, well, let's put it in the video. The challenge of creating a snapshot look on film was interesting and something that Harris Savides, the cinematographer, and I got excited by. Like, how do we make it look like a flash had just gone off?
And the only way to achieve that was by having a very small source of light. So we did some experimenting and made the smallest light I've ever seen. And
it looked really thrilling. It just, the look of it was sort of a 180 from how you're supposed to light something. I mean, it's just so dumb. It's like...
I thought I looked really pretty. And I saw the part of me in the pool and I was like, that's the prettiest picture. I look so pretty. And I thought, that's a real video. That's a real video, and I can't wait till everybody sees it.
What was really unique about Fiona at that time was she was the first, you know, female singer-songwriter who was, you know, astonishingly young to be writing these sophisticated and mature lyrics.
And they staged it as a 70s rec room key party with Fiona in a bra and underwear on a brown shag carpet, half-naked bodies stacked like cordwood around her. The New York Times called her a Lolita-ish suburban party girl. Romanek's stated brief was, in his own words, blatantly erotic. Apple defended it at the time as a piece of meta-commentary. I decided if I was going to be exploited, then I would do the exploiting myself.
I was really concerned at the time that she understood that we wanted to do something provocative, that she was okay with it. I pulled out a lot of photo references of the level and the degree of eroticism and sexuality that I thought might be interesting to portray, and I showed it to her and I said, this is the kind of stuff that I think would be interesting to do. Are you okay with this? And she was fine with it.
The song was really about feeling bad for getting something so easily and taking advantage of, you know, your sexuality and just using it to get whatever you want, which ended up working with the video because it was a sexual video and I got exactly what I had wanted. But then I didn't feel good. I actually did feel like a criminal after that.
Later, in a Washington Post interview, she took most of it back. Forget the fact that I was in my underwear. I thought that it was cheesy. I didn't look like myself. It ruined the song for me. That, right there, is basically a Virgo looking back at her own body of work and issuing a correction.
She made some comments in some interviews that she felt kind of coerced, or that she didn't really have the ability to say no because I had a reputation as a big video director.
It was nothing against Mark, and it was nothing against the art of the video. I got so much shit for it. And, you know, all the people that are there during the video telling you how great it is, they're not there anymore. So then you have all these people that are there going, you sellout, you slut, you know, very confusing, but, you know, it's cool to talk about. It was beautiful. It's a good video. It looks really good. No, I think it's beautiful.
Then came that speech. September 1997, MTV Video Music Awards, Chris Rock hosting. Fiona, 19, in a white crochet dress, won Best New Artist in a video for Sleep to Dream. She walked to the microphone without a speech prepared and said, and I am giving you this verbatim because everybody misquotes it.
We as human beings at our best can only create opportunities, and I'm going to use this opportunity the way that I want to use it. Everybody out there that's watching, everybody that's watching this world is bull. You shouldn't model your life about what you think that we think is cool and what we're wearing and what we're saying and everything. Go with yourself. Go with yourself.
The room erupted. The press, in the morning, decided she was crazy. 28 years later, half the women who write about pop music quote that speech. Quick question, while we are here. Have you ever had a moment in your life where you said something too true in public and watched people decide you were unstable for it? Tell me in the comments. I am genuinely curious. And if you are enjoying this so far, the like button is right there, and it is genuinely one of the only ways the algorithm understands that what I am doing here matters to actual humans. So Fiona is 19, and it's 1997. She has a triple platinum debut, a cultural enemy in the form of MTV, and 2 boyfriends in quick succession, both of whom are about to feature heavily in the rest of this story. The first, briefly, is the magician David Blaine. She met him at a Grammys after party where he showed her a card trick. Then he levitated for her on their first date. Then he tattooed her name on his shoulder just before they broke up, sometime in 1998. Years later, when Blaine's name turned up in Jeffrey Epstein's address book, Fiona would say publicly that she was disturbed by it. The second relationship is the long one. Paul Thomas Anderson? Yes, that Paul Thomas Anderson. PTA, the director of Boogie Nights and One Battle After Another. They met in 1997 during a photo shoot, and were together until 2002. She sang Save Me over the closing credits of his film Magnolia in 1999. He directed her Hot Knife video in 2013, long after the breakup. And in the 2020 New Yorker profile by Emily Nussbaum, Fiona finally described what their relationship had actually felt like from the inside. Cocaine, ecstasy, heavy drinking. Anderson was coldly critical, contemptuous in a way that left her fearful and numb. She said he threw a chair across a room the night he lost the Best Director Oscar. She said he once shoved her out of his car while driving her to volunteer at UCLA's occupational therapy ward. He did not, she clarified, hit her. The line she gave Nussbaum about how she eventually quit cocaine is one of the great quotes of her career. Every addict should just get locked in a private movie theater with QT and PTA on coke, and they'll never want to do it again. Out of those years came the second album, When the Pawn, released in November 1999, produced by John Brion. That's the one where the full title is 90 words long. I am not going to read it to you, but it is in fact a poem she wrote in response to letters readers had sent to Spin magazine after a 1997 cover story about her. The cover story was a piece called Girl Trouble, written by John Weir and shot by Terry Richardson, and it framed her the way most of the press of the period framed her, as fragile, neurotic, and lonely. She submitted the 90-word poem as a corrective. The Guinness Book of World Records gave her an entry for it. That is the most obviously Virgo revenge in the history of recorded music. Now we get to Roseland, February 29th, year 2000. Leap Day, fittingly. New York. A sold-out crowd of 3,000. Fiona was fighting her in-ear monitors, could not hear herself, and started mid-set to emotionally fall apart. She apologized between songs. She told the audience the show sucked. She walked off after about 40 minutes. The press the next day was vicious. She wrote a handwritten apology posted to a fan site that said, in part, "I am so fucking sorry that I don't have whatever it takes to be professional in a situation like that." Years later, in 2005, she gave a more useful version of it. Once you have faced public failure and humiliation and walked through it, and you are still fine, you stop being afraid of it. The Roseland year bled into the extraordinary Machine debacle, which is the part of her story most fans of a certain age remember by heart. She recorded the album with John Brion in 2002. She was unhappy with the production. The label sat on it. Bootlegs leaked online in 2004. Fans organized themselves into a campaign called Free Fiona and mailed foam apples to Sony's offices. The standard story, that Sony had rejected the record, turned out to be wrong. As her later collaborator Mike Elizondo told Spin, the call to redo the album was Fiona's, not the label's. She re-recorded most of it with Elizondo and Brian Kehoe. It came out in October 2005 and instantly went gold. The fan campaign, in retrospect, is a small snapshot of how much loyalty she had inspired. And if you are still here, this is a good moment to subscribe, because the second half is where the persona crystallizes. The bolt cutters, the New Yorker profile, the queerness, the dog, the activism, and finally, the practical beauty breakdown I promised. And do hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. I am doing Sinead O'Connor in 2 weeks, and you do not want to find out about it from someone else. So 2 more albums before we land. The Idler Wheel, 2012, co-produced with her touring drummer Charlie Drayton. It is the leanest, weirdest record she has ever made. Almost no traditional band, mostly piano and percussion, and her sister Maud singing the high harmony in a counterpoint that Fiona later described to New York Magazine as the most intimate moment of their lives together. Then, 8 years of silence, broken on April 17th, 2020, the early weeks of the pandemic, when she released Fetch the Bolt Cutters. The title was a line she had lifted from the BBC drama The Fall, spoken by Gillian Anderson's detective, as she ordered tools to break into a locked room where a kidnap victim had been held. The whole album is in that posture. Get me out. I have been in here too long. Pitchfork, the most reliably stingy review apparatus in music criticism, gave it a 10. The first 10 they had given in almost a decade. It won her 2 Grammys, including Best Alternative Music Album. It was named Album of the Year by Pitchfork, Rolling Stone, Time, NPR, and Vulture. The Recording Academy, in a final act of tone deafness, did not nominate it for Album of the Year. She did not attend the ceremony. She told a friend on her behalf, "It's not because I'm trying to protest, I just don't want to be on national television."
When the pawn hits the conflicts, he thinks like a king. What he knows throws the blows when he goes to the fight. And he'll win the whole thing before he enters the ring. There's no body to batter when your mind is your might. So when you go solo, you hold your own hand and remember that depth is the greatest of heights. And if you know where you stand, then you know where to land. And if you fall, it won't matter, because you know that you're right.
She lives in Venice Beach now, in a low, walled house she rarely leaves, with her dog Mercy. Mercy came after the long death of her beloved pit bull Janet, whom Fiona had rescued at 4 months old from an Echo Park dogfighting ring in 1999. Janet became, in her words from a 4-page handwritten letter to fans in 2012, the most consistent relationship of my adult life, my best friend and my mother and my daughter, my benefactor. Fiona has no smartphone, by the way. She does not tour. Since the pandemic, she has been a remote court watcher with Court Watch PG in Prince George's County, Maryland. She sits in on bail and bond hearings via Zoom, taking notes on what she has called thousands of cases in support of incarcerated women, mostly black women, mostly held pretrial because they cannot afford bond. In May 2025, she released a song called Pretrial, Let Her Go Home, her first new music in 5 years, as a fundraiser for Free Black Mamas DMV. Her quote on why she does it: "It made sense that when people are having their worst day and are at their most vulnerable, at the very least, we should be there with them and be a witness." So, what does she represent then? What is she for? Fiona stopped wearing makeup, mostly stopped doing publicity, and converted her whole adult life into one long argument about a woman's interior. The way Fiona sits cross-legged on the floor mid-set, contorts at the piano, grimaces and bares her teeth and refuses, every second she is on a stage, to perform the kind of liquid sexiness the camera is always hoping for. The most erotic thing about Fiona Apple has always been her vocabulary. The women I know who love Fiona Apple love her almost with a Stockholm Syndrome feel to it, with respect for the pain. And there's more. There is the handwritten letter she sent in year 2000 at 22 to a 16-year-old high schooler organizing a gay-straight alliance. If a good boy loves a good girl, good. If a good boy loves another good boy, good. And if a good girl loves the goodness in good boys and good girls, then all you have is more goodness. There is also the Howard Stern interview at 19, where she pushed back on the assumption that lesbian meant butch.
It was ridiculous.
Well, all this slowly but surely brings us to the practical beauty blueprint, because Fiona Apple has built, almost accidentally, one of the most copyable anti-trend looks of the last 30 years. Skin first. She has always favored almost nothing. Bare, slightly translucent. Freckles visible. Occasionally a little foundation or concealer for press. Never the heavy mid-90s matte mask. Then the signature is smudged kohl on the lower lash line. A darker version of it pushed into the upper lash line. Some mascara, and nothing else. It should look slept in. The criminal eye is a sultrier variant. A soft, smoky shadow on the lid. The same smudged liner underneath. For evening, you can take it even darker. But you should never take it cleaner. She did not, ever, do the pencil-thin 90s brow. She wore her brows full and lightly groomed, slightly heavy, in their natural shape. If you take one practical thing from this video, take that. The full brow is the cheapest facelift kind of thing available, and it is free. Then lips, almost always a stained natural color or a balm. The trick is that she lets the lip recede so the eye carries the face. If you are wearing the smudged kohl, do not also wear a noticeable lipstick. Pick one. Then comes hair. Long, natural, middle-parted, often crimped in the Tidal era, often unstyled in every other era. She has worn a fringe at various points and grown it out at various points. She has never, to my knowledge, employed a celebrity hairstylist who has talked publicly about it. The look is some dry shampoo and a texture you were just born with. Wardrobe is where she is most unwittingly influential. Black slip dress, worn with combat boots or barefoot. Oversized men's button-down, sleeves rolled, over a tank or a vintage tee. Spaghetti strap crop top, tied up by hand. Cargo or carpenter pants in the later years. A lot of layering, sheer mesh under things, slips over things. A cardigan that's 3 sizes too big. A photographer named Joe McNally once put her in a literal suit of armor on the New York subway at her own request. She wanted to chuck that whole waif scene and be a warrior woman. She is 5'2", and she uses oversized menswear to play with her own proportions, on purpose. You can do the same thing anytime. Do not perform sexy. Let your intelligence be the most legible thing in the room. Fiona, at 47, still looks like Fiona. That is more than most can say for themselves. If you have made it this far, thank you. Genuinely, do tell me which Fiona Apple album is your album. The one that found you at the right age, in the right apartment, on the right bad night. I always read every comment on these videos, and I will read yours. And please be kind to yourself and others around you. A little kindness can go a long way. I've queued up the next chapter for you here. I'll see you soon. Love, Kira. Now go create your own blueprint.
Dad, they're all bruised and filthy.
Yeah, these might be throwing at buses apples, not eating apples.